Okay. Okay. Hey everyone. I guess I'll give a couple minutes just to make sure everything. I just need to make sure that when I navigate to the internet that my screen continues to share. Tanis, can you see me? You can't see me opening Google right now, right?
No, I cannot. I can see
Okay,
your
that's
opening slide.
okay. So that means I got to do this differently and do my whole desktop.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. Since it's 10:02, we will get going. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Sorry about the confusion on the dates on an email a couple weeks ago. There was multiple flying around, so I'm glad we all landed on the same day and we're here and we're excited to learn about marketing. So today we're going to be going through some higher level marketing and media concepts, and then also really diving into the kind of relationship between the Open Farm Days channels, as well as host farms, how we can work together to get as much, interesting storytelling, amplification, etc., and gain as much traction for Open Farm Days this year. So quickly, I am Cameo. I am the coordinator for both, or the marketing coordinator for both Open Farm Days and ACE. I stepped into this role about last June, so kind of right when we were ramping up for Open Farm Days. So it's been a neat kind of now going through a full cycle and seeing where we're at this year compared to last, and my personal level of organization now that I've been through an Open Farm Days and I know what it takes. So hoping that makes a much more seamless experience for all of you this year as well, and that we can have reach those larger marketing goals. So yeah, I do own a marketing company, and that's why I'm contracted into roles like these. And I went to the University of Alberta, and most importantly, I grew up on a farm. So I feel like I have an affinity for farms and understanding just how interesting the content is, especially to those who live in a city and don't get to experience that on a daily basis. So today, like I said right at the beginning, we're going to walk through 2025 OFD. We're going to talk about how we can market together and make the most powerful messaging and help each other out. And then just getting actually a little bit more granular onto marketing strategies, specifically in social media, etc. Oh, sorry, I'm just reading the chat really quick. Oh, what's ACE? How about actually Tanis? I can't see the chat the way that I'm sharing. So if any major questions come up, if you want to just interrupt and say, hey, we have a question.
Yeah,
That would
absolutely.
be
I will follow the chat.
fabulous. Thank you so much. So yeah. So if you've been in a presentation from me before, you will know that I always say this because I cannot stress enough. Farm life is so novel and interesting to those who don't farm. I think when you're living in that every day, like you guys are, you can start to think, oh, this is mundane. There's nothing to talk about out here, or maybe others won't find this interesting because you probably don't at this point because it's your day to day. But I just want to say that people go crazy for this style of content because they're so unfamiliar with it. They don't get to interact with anything farm life or animals on a daily basis. So I just always preface with that because it's almost good to take a step back and think, okay, wow, there's actually unlimited topics on your farm to talk about that you may have become blind to that I think the average consumer would be super eager to learn about and has been proven in the past. So in our first section, so the theme for 2025 is water. The lifeblood of every farm is a tagline we've developed. So I personally really love this theme because last year's was the year of the alpaca, which was super neat. It was very interesting. I personally learned a lot about alpacas. They were very cute. But the thing about that theme is that, of course, it didn't apply to many of our farms. If you didn't have alpacas on it, you weren't as involved in that particular storyline. So this year is really neat because everyone utilizes water in a very massive way to their farms. So I think that opens up a lot more angles to cover more farms and to kind of create this very broad storytelling that can highlight all these different elements, whether it's the struggles you've had with water or, water systems you've added or et cetera over the years, and create just a lot of talking points leading up to Open Farm Days. So one way that we're facilitating this is every second week, we are releasing an Open Farm Days water story. So if many of you have, I don't know if particular on this call, but many farms have already emailed me, which is awesome. If you've gotten emails from me, you have seen that there's been a little blurb about submitting your water story. So essentially what we're doing is, we're putting out a call to all of you. If you have a story you'd like to share about water, you can send it to me or you can contact me. I will then send you a form, which I'm going to kind of walk us through quickly next so you know what to expect. And once you do this, what you get from that is we'll feature it on our website. So in the story section, we'll do social posts on it as well. And then what that can also open up doors for is some future press coverage down the road as we get more into that season when people are contacting us for stories. Because a lot of the time they do take a look at our stories and they go, oh, I really love story X from this farm. Do you think that we could call them and get deeper on it type thing? So just really quick. I'm hoping this lets me navigate seamlessly. Oh, of course, I'm on the wrong thing. Please hold. So I'll just quickly go through the interview with you guys, just because I want to, the point is not to overwhelm you or take too much of your time when you do this. So I'll just quickly go through what the essence is and the information I would need to write an effective story. So what you'll be sent is a copy of a form that looks like this. It's not too long. It gives a little bit of a kind of blurb as to setting the stage. And then it's just a questionnaire that you can fill out directly, like you can type directly in the sheet and answer things. You do not need to answer every single question because they might not all apply to you, or you may be able to have a very, very interesting storyline just based off one or two. So don't feel the obligation to be writing like a full story. It can be in bullet points too, so long as like the information that you really want to be relayed is there clearly. In addition to that, any photos you have is extremely helpful. Those are best to just email me directly when you're submitting this, like, hey, filled out my form, here it is, and here are some photos that I'd like to be alongside. And that's pretty much the bulk of it. So, these can get to be pretty specific prompts, were there particular stories, what happened, etc. There can be broader ones. The point of this is just to be able to kind of prompt your creative juices to get a story out. But if you already have one in mind, then you may just be able to breeze through this, give me some bullet points, and then we can do a great story. So I'll just check the chat quick. Pop in the chat. Yeah, that was perfect. Okay, awesome. So where's my PowerPoint here? There we go. Okay, so that's just the storytelling method and how that works, and that's what I'm referencing in all of those ebooks. Like I said right at the beginning, I love this theme because every single one of you has an experience with water, and I think that just gives us a unique opportunity to give way more people the opportunity to share about their stories. Okay, so now for resources, we did a bit of revamping to make it a little bit easier for farms to navigate through. So we're going to again go through that in real time, and there are some critical points I would love to chat with you all about that I feel like are most helpful to you. So where we are right now, we are just in the general Open Farm Days site. We navigate over to up here where it says host farm resources. And I am logged in already. Your guys' password will be, currently it's the 2024 password, and it will be changed to the exact same one with just 2025, but I will email you when that happens. That'll happen in the new year. So we navigate to host resources. And what the bulk of the change right now is that there used to be a lot more boxes and things I found were quite spread out. So I consolidated, we still have things broken up, all your different licensing, etc., safety things. What we're talking about today is, the communication element. So I consolidated all to this top tab here, communication assets. And some of the main things that are pertinent for today is I've put together a communications toolkit. So, oh, wait, sorry. This is just a toolkit. This is similar to previous years with a few updates. So this can give you just different talking points, different background on the event for when you're going to, whether it's populate your website, etc. So give some newsletter examples. We won't go through that too much in depth, but that's where that is. One thing that is that I just recently put together is this media kit. And this is to help you guys on your socials, etc. Because I understand not everyone is a graphic designer, not everyone has the time and or resources to do so. So we made a lot of different social media squares and imagery for you guys that you could be utilizing. So things like, 1 week to go, things like when is Open Farm Days, what's the theme, etc. These are just things that you can be using on your channels to supplement your communications to make your lives a little bit easier. There's also some Instagram story templates, so the longer ones that you could fit and put links to when the time comes. And then in this too, there's just the logos that are current that you can utilize both in a PNG format. And then if you get into a situation where, say, you're doing print and your designer wants something that is a EPS or a vector format, that exists in here as well. The last thing in here is just some copy and messaging. So it's just some, information, like kind of boilerplate copy on what is it, when is it, what are our talking points, what are some core activities. Yeah, I won't be going through this in depth today, but just so you know, it is there. It's there for you to utilize, and it is live. In terms of the other elements, a lot of these become more important as we get closer to the event. Things like the posters, the survey posters. As I mentioned earlier, with it being my first year being through the full process, these are available much earlier than they were last year, which will hopefully make your lives easier going down the stretch. You won't have to be checking if they're there. They'll just be there because they already are. Link to the Facebook group, etc. And then one last thing, if you do need a QR code on any of your materials, that when you scan it, it goes to the Open Farm Days website, it is in there as well. So that's a quick resources tour. They will be updated as time goes through, but anytime there's a major update, I will be sending out an email so that everyone knows. So again, you won't have to be going back and forth and checking. So that's just kind of some of that high level OFD specific stuff. So now I want to get into us marketing together and how we can essentially join forces to make sure that the story gets out, that we have content, and that, we can be crafting the most interesting and compelling messaging as we get closer and closer to August. So I always make sure I make this abundantly clear, like, we want to amplify farms. You are the sole thing we actually want to talk about. It's the farms. You're the most interesting thing. You're the most dynamic. So in knowing that, here is all of our major handles. So here's our Instagram. This is the website. Here is our Facebook. Those are the primary channels we use. We will be utilizing TikTok a little bit more this year, which could be fun. So again, looking for video content there. But what I do like to make very clear is, we want to amplify you, but one of our biggest barriers is content, right? I'm not out on the farms. I have more now from last year, but limited videos, photos, stories, etc. So anytime you guys feel inclined to send things over, like you have an event, or maybe a baby was born on your farm, or something cool happened and you have some photos, I would love those to be sent to me. Those can be via Instagram DM. You can email them to my email, which will be shared at the end, and I can put it in the chat too. Anything with a couple bullet points, because at the end of the day, like I said, the biggest barrier is actually having that live, interesting farm-based content. So I'm putting out a call. The offer stands forever, and we'd love to see anything that you're up to. So then in terms of just making sure that we can interact in the best way possible, one of the key elements to making sure that we can amplify you well is making sure that your Open Farm Days listing is written very, very well. Because when we are doing, so say you do send us some awesome photos and we do a social post, it gets good traction. A lot of the time what people will then do is go visit your OFD listing page. And if we're driving them to a listing page that maybe isn't fully written, or it's not very dynamic, or it's not capturing your farm well, that could then, lessen your chances of them visiting your farm, or not as much of an impact as it could. So what I like to say is that, your listing is one of the largest factors that influences visitors as to whether they're going to visit you or not when they're planning out their Open Farm Days experience. So making sure you put extra attention and care and detail into that is one of my biggest recommendations. So what I say to make sure this does go very well is make sure it's a very comprehensive set of information. So everything that is going on your farm that day that could be interesting to a visitor, all the programming, all the things you have to offer, make sure that is all in there. Grammar and professionalism, that is some low-hanging fruit, but over the years, not all of them adhere. So make sure you're giving it a good proofread. I'm going to do a bit of a ChatGPT demonstration later. So what a lot of the times I will do is when I've written something out, whether it's an email or a newsletter, etc., I'll actually just copy and paste it, run it through ChatGPT, and ask ChatGPT, hey, can you make sure this reads smoothly? Hey, can you make sure that this is as a full storytelling to someone that hasn't interacted with my farm before? You can ask it different questions and it will make suggestions based on those. So that's something that I would recommend you guys do for your listing if you kind of want almost a second set of eyes, if you will. I like to say write it like someone has never even heard of a farm before, because I know I personally get very guilty of when I'm explaining something that I'm very familiar with. I actually miss a lot of very basic elements. I assume they know it already because I know the topic so well. So thinking, okay, what exactly, like what's someone who's never even stepped foot on a farm, what could they expect? What does it, smell like and taste like, and why is it exciting, and what could they look forward to, and what might they not even know would be out there? It are some recommendations I like to make, and then which really just ties in those last 2 points: appeal to the senses and just story tell. Have all your facts in there, but I like to present it in like something, you're inviting them into what could be a really epic day for them, and writing that in a way that they can almost envision that, and it draws them in, are some great points that we've seen success with in the past. Similar to me saying that I want to use your content, another way that you can do this if you don't want to be emailing me photos is when you are posting on your own, tagging us, which you guys are great at, inviting us as a collaborator. We'll often accept, we don't always, just based on our own posting schedule, but at least then we'll be tagged in it, because this way we can also download those photos and have access to them. So yeah, anything that you are posting that's related to Open Farm Days or just related to something interesting happening on your farm, tag us. If it's very specific, like you're like, hey, I'd really like this featured, send us a little message with the post right on Instagram, like, hey, this just happened, want you guys to see it. That's one of the probably easiest ways for you to do it, and then we get some kind of 2-for-1 while you're already putting that time into posting on your channels.
Cameo, can I jump in with a quick question? So,
Yes.
and I know this comes up every year, because as we get closer and closer, people have content, they're looking for ways that we can help amplify what they're doing for Open Farm Days. So now I know as we get closer and closer, you sort of become inundated with lots of people sharing kind of in that sort of critical time frame where we're sort of focusing our marketing efforts on sort of bigger picture stuff. So can you perhaps give some ideas and guidance of, if people are looking to have their stories and their things posted, what is the best way to engage with you, and when is the best way that you've got a bit more control over, what gets put up?
In terms of so tagging Open Farm Days Instagram and Facebook directly, so tagging it in your post, and that, a step further than that is then once you post it, like messaging, like you can, on Instagram how you can DM a post to someone, message it to our account. That's just another layer, because sometimes, like Tana said, there are so many tags one day we just miss them, or it just gets pushed down the notification list and things happen, right? So messaging it to us directly. Those are 2 ways that can be done via social. The third is emailing your story and or photos. Hey, this happened, a little bit of context, what you'd like highlighted, etc., the name of your farm. Those are the 3 best ways to do it. In terms of timeline, no particular timeline. When we come to Open Farm Days week and weekend, if you noticed last year, it was our reposting. I think how it says all the little stories at the top was like this long. So we try to repost every single story we are mentioned in that day, or at least every, if your farm does 10 in a row, we'll at least do a few. So every single farm is getting that. Yeah, what I'll often do too is when we're getting tagged in all those photos during the Open Farm Day weekend, and what you'll notice is happening on social right now, is I save all of them. So then when it comes to this year, we're doing kind of throwbacks for the things that we didn't get a chance to repost at the time. So long story short, this time of year, I really need content. So if you have things, I'd really appreciate it. And your likelihood of getting a full repost are very much higher because I'm desperate for it. As we get in Open Farm Days, following the same systems, just knowing that sometimes there is an overwhelming amount of communication there. So we might not be able to be highlighting every single one of them, despite us wanting to.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. So in terms of, this is kind of just reiterating those last 2 points, so sending things directly. Here is my marketing email. So I'm just gonna pop this in the chat really quickly so you guys have it with you. Whoopsie daisies. Yeah, so there's that would be the best way. And just reiterating, content is king is the biggest barrier in this organization, and the majority of organizations is having the content, having the video, having the whatever information, the stories, because we're such a small team, so we're not able to be out on the farms collecting it ourselves. So getting it from you guys is key. And I just bookend this. We want to amplify you, and that is our goal, and that's why we're here. The most interesting thing in the world is the farms themselves, not the organization. We're just merely a channel to get your stories out. So again, send it away. Okay, so now this is into the last part. This is where we're going to get a little bit more specific into the things that you guys can be doing on your end, and how that can create some really great marketing results. We're going to talk mostly about social media today, and the way that we can be utilizing that, because that is becoming one of the largest delivery methods of information. But with that being said, the essence of social media is still not to be sold to, or not to be just talked at. It's to storytell and to be interesting. I mean, we go on there to be entertained. We don't go on there to just be, consistently given sales pitches. So being able to craft content in a way that adheres to that is to your advantage, and one of the best strategies. So when it comes to these topics, I think the most important thing to establish before you make a single piece of content or write a single word is just taking a second to think, okay, what does my farm bring to the table? Like, what makes us interesting? What's our major value propositions? What have people enjoyed in the past? When people came out to your farm for this event, or for whatever else you may be offering, what was the feedback? What did they love? What did they couldn't wait to bring other people for? Understanding those things, it sounds so rudimentary, but it's often overlooked when it comes to crafting strong marketing. So taking the second to be like, okay, what are our biggest differentiators? What are our biggest whys as to someone would come visit us? And then being able to build your content off of those. So the second part of that is understanding, okay, so now we know what we do and what we're great at. So now who does that align with? Who wants to then experience that? Because another common marketing error is now it's like, okay, I may understand what I'm great at and what people could want, but I don't understand who wants it. So then I go after the wrong individuals, or I craft my marketing in a way that doesn't align with what they're after. So understanding who you want to reach is also another crucial point. And what I mean by that is, are you family oriented? Is it something that you really want to market towards the moms and dads and the decision makers that are looking for something family friendly? Are you more, are you maybe a distillery or something, and are you more looking to go to that, young adult crowd and add in that more social element, etc.? Like those, messaging to a family and messaging to someone who's looking to have some beers are very, very different tones and very, very different imagery and content, etc. So that's another piece where it's like, okay, you understand those two things. Now you actually have a foundation to start crafting meaningful messaging from there. This is just that kind of displayed in more of a Venn diagram form. So what you have to offer and what your ideal customer truly wants, the intersection between those things is what you should be talking about. Because that's the biggest element of alignment. If you're talking about things that aren't giving much value, and even if it's to the right audience, you have misalignment and vice versa. So this is the simplest formula to creating meaningful content. So when it comes to social, I love this in the Open Farm Days lens, because you guys' offerings are so visual. I mean, think about like whether it's baby animals or taking crops off, or sunsets. You have that to your advantage. There's a lot of industries that don't. I mean, things like manufacturing, etc. It's like there's not that much visually capturing elements, but you guys have that, and I encourage you to use it to your advantage. So that's why social is such a massive element for you guys. It also gives you the opportunity to really connect with your audience over time. I mean, those who visited you in previous years, those who, met an animal and could be invested in that storyline. There's so many different ways to actually cultivate those touch points on an ongoing basis in a way like social that's very informal, if you will. Once they're following you, they're able to see your content. It doesn't mean sending out newsletter blasts or updating your website. Like this is a way that you can do on a very constant basis, often with a lighter lift, and you're able to get very big exposure from that. So when it comes to just best practices, some of the main things that I always feel that should be focused on is quality visuals is a big one. So we're now in a day and age where the level of content and the quality of it is just increasingly raising. This does not mean that everyone needs to be a professional videographer or be paying tons of money to get someone out there to shoot commercials. No, that's not what that means. But being mindful that poor quality images are just not attracting people the same that they used to be, because the bar has been raised, is just something. So iPhone's great. it's better than great. It's actually the best thing that you can be shooting on for social media, or Android if you have one. But paying attention to lighting, focus, centering images, making sure colors are bright, even little elements like that make a big difference when it comes to like great content and good content. Staying engaged is something that is massive. Like I talked about in the previous slide, that element of like community and keeping people involved in your storyline is huge. So this means responding to comments, responding to messages. When you are tagged in content, say a visitor sees your farm or comes there and posts, reposting it to your story, making sure that they are being rewarded, if you will, for sharing information about you and encouraging people to do it in the future. It is a huge element. That two-way conversation and community of social media, the value in that cannot be understated. When it comes to copy, which is the writing that is on all of your posts, keeping it concise, keeping it interesting. Facebook has a little bit more room for like longer form content. And if you do have a very interesting story or a point that you're very passionate about, feel free to utilize longer form content. But generally speaking, especially on Instagram, the shorter captions are performing better. I mean, think about you as a user when you're scrolling. Are you reading every single word and clicking see more and reading everything? Probably not unless you're super interested. So just knowing that when you're posting content and, quite frankly, saving yourselves time rather than having to write a 500-word caption for everything, utilizing that concept. And then a big point, and probably the biggest point for social, is just staying consistent. I'll slide on this later, but social media is one of those things where it takes a long time to often see return. And it can feel like you're posting and you're almost like you're shouting into the void. But honestly, if you have quality content and you post it consistently over time, you will gain traction, you will gain a community, you will start to reach your marketing goals. And I see that time and time again. It's just a matter of committing to that and not giving up when you don't see results right away. So remaining active, even if you can be posting once a week. I'm not saying you need to be posting 7 days a week. That's completely unreasonable. And in fact, I don't recommend that at all. But if you can just be, sticking to a somewhat consistent schedule, utilizing stories as much as you can as well, just to like keep your page active, etc. Those are really positive things to be doing. So now we're getting much more specific. So content creation itself is hard. Like it is. I mean, I'm someone who works in this and I struggle with it still on a daily basis, especially when this is very much a teensy tiny part of your daily jobs. I mean, you guys are very busy. You're running entire farm operations. So I totally respect that and appreciate that, which is why we're going to go through some tips and tricks that I use to make it feasible to create content, to have a plan, and to be able to execute on that plan, especially given the beauty that we have a lot of time before open farm days. So if we can get strategic and plan accordingly, we all should be able to deliver a pretty solid communications package for that. So I'm going to do a live example right now on ChatGPT. So this is actually a topic that we are looking to bring someone into the conference to speak about. And I think a lot of people, when they think like using AI, they're like, oh man, I don't even know where to start. Like that's something I'm not versed in. But ChatGPT has some really, really great, really easy to use applications that are perfect for the next few things we're going to talk about. So actually, just to set the stage for this, in a few slides, what I have here is actually just a content, almost little planner. So it's got like a topic, the content that you need, and the date that you want to deliver it. ChatGPT is amazing for helping you actually build what should be in here and how you can deliver it. And you can actually get as specific, sorry to be jumping around, you can get as specific as asking it, okay, I want to create some interesting content around subject X, and it gives you some ideas. And then you go, okay, I really like topic, whatever. Can you write me a script for that? Can you write me a shot list? Like it can almost be your little producer. And all you have to do is follow this blueprint yourself. So I am going to show you an example of that that I hope can really just, help you guys in executing on all this in the future. So ChatGPT is free. There's a pro version, but to all of you, you can access it right on Google or Chrome or whatever browser you are using. So what I usually do, so I'm going to start, I'm moving my Zoom screen around so I can see what I'm talking about. So let's just start with content brainstorming. So I have a cattle ranch that I would like to market to visitors on social media. Can you help me come up with 5 creative video and photo concepts to do this? So the thing with ChatGPT is the more specific you can get, the more refined and useful your results will be. So this is quite broad. So we're going to start with this, and then we're going to go through an exercise as to how this works. So as you can see, it just starts actually just pumping out general ideas, which I also love because these may not be what you end up using, but it kind of gets you started. It gets you into that creative mindset. It gives you some ideas that then you can build upon. So we've got a day in the life on the ranch. So that gives you a concept. We're showcasing the daily routines of ranch life. We're using a time lapse and drone footage. As you can see, it sometimes just gives you things that aren't feasible. I don't expect any of you to be flying a drone around your farms, but we can work with that. Sunset on the Range photo series, ranch cuisine spotlight. So maybe not all those are relevant. So let's use a day in the life ranch series. So I'm going to then ask it, I like a day in the life ranch video series. Can you give me a list of 5 shots I need to video, as well as a script for any talking points? So I give it that, and it goes and takes it a step further. So it says, okay, sunrise and morning chores, feeding the cattle. And again, this is very generic, given this example. You can go more like, hey, here's what my life looks like, generally speaking. Here's what I flow my day. Can you then create me a plan out of that? Hands-on ranch work, etc., the herd in action, evening reflection, and sunset. So, and then it'll give you tips for execution. So you can keep giving it back more and more, and you can go, actually, oh, got my caps lock on. Actually, we really want to focus on our shop on the property and how visitors can buy local goods there. Can you add an element? I love ChatGPT because it is so responsive for things like this, and it'll just, continue to go back and forth, and there's no limit on how many prompts you can get it. So you can continue to do things so you get exactly what you want. What I often do is I get this baseline, I take it away, and then I customize it a little bit more. But yeah, so it'll rewrite things according to what you need. And then we can also, once you're done things like that, you can ask it to create you a content calendar. You can ask it to build you a shot list. The possibilities are endless, but I like to give people this as one of the most, lowest barrier to entry and easiest ways to utilize it. I think the last thing that we could ask it so now we have all this information. You can copy and paste any of this out. You can, make it create a document for you. Now I'm just going to do it a little more broadly. Can you please give me 10 video concepts that would take me less than 1 minute to film to use to promote my farm this winter? And you can just generate your list. So it'll just give you even something like this, shop doors open. It can be as simple as you just taking a quick video. It tells you the text to put on it. I'm not saying that all this content is going to be the most valuable, earth-shattering content in the world, but it can certainly get you started, getting you on a consistent posting basis and making your life a lot easier when it comes to the planning component of it. Does anyone, while I saw ChatGPT open, does anyone have any ChatGPT specific questions or want to watch me demonstrate anything in particular? Cool. So yeah, so that's one that I do. Oh, I think this chat just came in. I would love a list. Yes, absolutely. I can send that list. And I can even copy some of those over. I also have a little prompt list coming up too, or not prompt list, but content idea list. And I can send that almost over as like a starting guide for each of you that can support this exercise here.
Cameo, can you ask them what types of water stories from a farm would be interesting?
What kind of water form bar? Ask ChatGPT that? Or yeah. Let's say I am looking to highlight water stories on my farm, but I can't think of anything interesting. Can you please give me a list of water-related topics for farms that I could potentially highlight? Because, you know, it's gonna spit out things that you might say something irrigation that you don't have on your farm, but at least it can, and then you can go back and say, hey, actually, I don't have X, Y, and Z, or I only have these elements, or you could even get more specific with your prompt and say, hey, I have a lake on my farm and X, Y, Z. Can you give me some content for that? Oh, it's taking a minute on this one. Sometimes I find it just gets a little bit bogged down when I navigate away. So I'm actually going to refresh and ask it this again. Maybe it's my internet. Oh, there we go. So yeah, this is why I really do love it, because to that point that I was saying, I'm going to keep it standard on these first. The point that I was saying at the beginning, where I believe it's very easy to become blind to the things that we work on every day. So it's like, oh man, I don't feel like it's interesting. And now it brings up, okay, we can talk about the role it has in your farming, how you manage it, you know, the environmental impact, or how steps you take on your farm to ensure that you are being environmentally friendly or conscious. Historical water stories, if you've ever had an extreme weather incident. It's all these little prompts to get your own brain flowing. And I think it can completely revolutionize your like content creation process and really lower the time and barriers to entry here. Water and wildlife. See, that's one that I hadn't thought about. Educational content, explaining water's role in farm to table processes. Another one that, even as someone who's been on this topic, it's like, oh, that's something at a level I hadn't even thought about, even though it's extremely interesting, especially for those more interested in the culinary aspects of it. So thanks, Tanis. That was a great little exercise to add in there.
Yeah, and we've got a question in the chat too, which I think is great. So is it better to focus on one water-based topic or up to 2 or 3? Water's huge at our place, so many directions we could go. So for your social storytelling, how would you like to see farms look at that?
That's a great question. I would say for farms, if feel like they have like a lot of really interesting angles, I would approach it as more of a series. So, you know, it's only December right now. Open Farm Days is until August. We have quite a bit of time. So I'd almost break it up. It's like, say you have 3 really large, like interesting points you want to communicate. I'd spend a couple of months focusing on one. Maybe months isn't the right word. A couple of posts and reels. So you say you want to make a couple videos and a couple shots for each, and maybe write a small story about it or whatever you have the resources for. And you focus on one and you really flesh out that story. And then you move on to the next and you create the content surrounding that, and you make a little schedule. So we'll say January, February, I'm going to talk about my farm to table water involvement. In March, I'm going to talk about how we are environmentally friendly and the practices that we use on our farm. And as I get closer into the summer, I'm going to talk about how we meet water demands in the summer months to produce X, Y, Z, etc. So that's I would approach them all. I would just give them all each their designated time, because then you can get deeper on them and make sure that all those really interesting points within have the opportunity to be highlighted and not lost in a larger story that covers everything. Cool. Okay, so now the next few slides really do walk through that, how I just went through ChatGPT. This is now giving a little bit more of a system to that. And I'll talk about how you can plug in the things we just did on ChatGPT into these systems. So what I find is the most difficult for me when it comes to creating content is having a plan, a plan and pace to actually execute it, make sure it is created, and then be able to put it out onto my channels. So to actually be able to deliver on these, what I usually follow is, okay, I take my first minute to establish my communication goals. So what I talked about earlier when I showed you guys that Venn diagram, and you may have already done this point, is actually just figuring out, okay, what do I want to talk about? What do I need to talk about? And what do I need to make sure that my audience understands to be successful? Is it just about my open farm day listing? Is it about the consumer goods I sell on my farm? Is it about a cause I'm raising awareness for? No wrong answer, but just understanding that fully so that you can then set the direction of the content you create. Then this is really where ChatGPT comes in. I like to brainstorm or create a plan as to how I'm going to showcase these things. So now I know what I want to talk about. I can then take my things to ChatGPT or to a brainstorming session that I have with staff or my family. And I think, okay, how can we display this? Is it little videos? Is it interviews with farmers? Is it photo series? Is it a story? Is it maybe contacting some influencers or content creators in my community that I can invite to come check out the farm and tell it, them tell it on their behalf, etc. How am I going to do this? Then once I know what I want to talk with, how I'm going to talk about it, build out a calendar that slots in when I'm going to talk about these things, and then a checklist that supports that okay, if I am to talk about X and I want to deliver X content, that means I need to have a photo of a chicken, a video of my sprinkler system, and a whatever. Those are just random examples, but it gives you a very concrete plan as to what, when, and how all of these different topics are going to be delivered on your channels, and gives you a solid game plan. Because what I've noticed about content, when there isn't a plan, it just often just doesn't get done. That's what happens to me. It's just the easiest thing. You have a busy day, the phone doesn't come out. So with that too, I like to, even if I can spend, or if you guys could spend as little as an hour a month, you're going to dedicate an hour to walking around the farm with your phone. And now you have this list. I call it a shot list. And I'm going to go I got to take this picture and take this video. And then boom, an hour a month, you can create your content, and then you're good to go. So I like to do it all at once versus a little bit every day, because then that can get very fragmented and often more difficult to deliver on. So this is just an example calendar as to, okay, here's the things I want to talk about. I know I need to get an interview with this person or a photo of this, and this is when I need it by. So that's just how those look. You can do that in a variety of ways. Sometimes I'll do them in an Excel spreadsheet. Sometimes I'll write them on a piece of paper. Sometimes I'll put them in a calendar view. Whatever is easiest for you is the right way to do that. I find something that's just like very visual, very bullet point, and easy to understand. So I can almost I will sometimes print things off and check a box off when I take the photo or when I have the content I need, just to make it as easy as possible to keep track of and execute on. Here is a list, a little bit of a list about some content ideas that I find farms almost always are able to execute on and that are low-hanging fruit. So a day in the life of your farm, and that could be following around a specific staff. That could be even following around an animal. You could do a fun twist of a day in the life of our cattle herd. I mean, that could be boring. Maybe they're just hanging out in the field, but depends on the time of year. And you can showcase, when they're getting fed and are they getting groomed, or is it chickens and when are the eggs getting, et cetera, whatever. Maybe you have puppies. So you can do things like that. Farmer's favorite recipe. Meeting the animals always performs very, very well, especially if there's new births on the farm, and you can have a little bit of fun with it. You can say their favorite food is X or whatever. It's a little bit trivial, but I find those always perform very well because we do have often an affinity to animals, especially baby ones. This is called Plan for another 20 minutes. I'm just reading the chat. Yeah, this will be, I'm done my content in about 5-6 minutes. We'll have a little time for questions, but we'll for sure be off by 11. And yeah, so these are just some content ideas that I think are a great starting point. And then I find when you start shooting content, so if you guys want to steal all of these, I highly encourage that. You almost cannot get in the flow of it. It's like riding a bike, and then you start getting more confident with it. You have other ideas as you're out doing these, and I find it's very satisfying experience when you start to see the different ways that you can be creative and highlight things happening out on your farm or wherever you are. One thing I really, really like to highlight these days is that social media its role is almost changing. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of the times now, if I'm going to, let's say, go to a restaurant, I will pull up their social media page. I will look at the photos that they've posted, and I will gauge them off of that. Previously it was more website oriented. Okay, I'm going to go to their website. I'm going to read XYZ. I'm going to form my opinion and then make a decision, yes or no. But now social media is starting to do that. So sometimes I think it's easy to think, I'm not getting maybe a ton of engagement with my profile. My social media must be doing nothing. It's not. But a lot of these benefits that you're receiving are more subtle like this. You know, maybe it comes time for August and people are deciding where they want to go and they're pulling up your social and they see these little farm videos and they're like, oh, that looks awesome. I'm totally going to go. Maybe they go and there hasn't been a post in 3 months and they're like, I don't want to gamble because I don't know what it looks like. So I'm going to leave that one off my list. So I guess the return on social can sometimes be a little bit intangible, but I assure you that it is a huge, huge role in consumer decision making these days. And that even if you don't feel like someone saw your post and then clicked buy, that it's still having a very big impact on the way that your farm is being perceived and the decisions that are being made around it. A way that I like to now execute on this is if you have something that is very important that you want to communicate about your farm and you want to make sure that everyone who views you knows this, you can pin it on the top of your profile. So for this, it might be that you're participating in open farm days. It might be a little video where you give the high level. It's like, hey, welcome to ABC Farm. Here we do X tours. We have our little marketplace. We raise cattle and we do blank. You know, it could almost be a little commercial. And the beauty of pinning the post is that now, no matter how many other posts you make, it always stays at the top. So if someone's just visiting your profile and they're going to click on a handful of posts, you can guarantee that those are the ones that they're most likely to. You can never guarantee they'll click on it. So how we do this is very easy. These 3 dots on the top of when you've made a post already, you click on them, and then there's just this little pin to your profile, and you click it, and there you go. When you want to unpin it, same thing. Click on those dots, and then that pin will just say unpin from profile, and you can remove it. You can pin up to 3 posts, but you can also just have 1 or 2 if that's what you'd like. So I always recommend that you film. What I do for most businesses is have a little FAQ, so frequently asked questions thing pinned, and it'll just be, if you had 2 seconds or 2 minutes, to give a viewer everything they need to know about your business, you kind of include it in this, and that gives people the opportunity to learn very quickly and not have to start searching. Because we all know what it's like being a consumer or a web browser. When you can't find the information you need quickly, we tend to give up. We've become very almost spoiled that way with the easy access of the internet. So making it as easy as possible for people is ideal. And I kind of said this earlier, how we're not going on social to be sold to, but we do, the element of storytelling is so important, you know, showing things about how your farm operates and, you know, how visitor experience would look and all about the animals. That is the most powerful thing that you could do. And you'd be surprised. You don't even need to say we are focusing on open farm days. You don't even need to be saying over and over, come to open farm days, come to open farm days. No, rather you can story tell about the thing that happened on your farm that week and you know, the animal story X, and that can bring your audience in just as well. And then be like, oh, you know, they're also in open farm days. I should make this a stop. I like what I'm seeing there. I need to make sure that I see this. So don't, I think one of the more common mistakes on social is the idea that we need to be constantly selling. Quite the opposite, actually. Being constantly interesting and being constantly authentic are far more valuable than sales messaging on this particular platform. Collaborating with other people in your community is also just a really, really big positive for reasons where collaboration can, you know, it can create better storylines. It can create more, you know, in-person tangible collaboration opportunities. But for social, really what that means is that if you say you have a farmer's market, just as an example, and you're tagging them in your posts and they're interacting with it and they start sharing it to theirs, well, you may have just doubled the reach of that post then. You know, you're able to tap into other people's audiences when you engage them with your content. And that can be a really powerful thing. In fact, that's what I, as a strategy perspective, when it comes to breaking out reach without spending any dollars, who's in your community that you have some overlap that you can do some content together with, or at least be tagging them to hopefully be able to tap into their audience as well. I think with the nature of farms, there's often many opportunities for that, which is really, really just a great thing to be able to capitalize on. I talked about this already, but just I do encourage you guys to just stay consistent with it. It takes time. I know it can feel like you're just shouting into the void and no one's, you know, interacting with this content, but I promise you, you are moving the needle, and the longer that you stick with it, the better results you will see. I mean, sure, there's some people that their first few videos go viral and they're cruising from there on out, but the most of us, it takes months and months and years really of constant posting and being consistent with there to begin growing that audience and getting traction. But it often very much is a snowball effect. So A little bit hard to get it going at first, but as it grows faster and faster, and it's very rewarding. This is my last slide. This is just something I wanted to make sure everyone knew about in terms of resources you guys can use to be able to execute on your social, your website, etc., that are free and user-friendly. So when it comes to web design, most of you probably already have websites on a host, but if you do start one from scratch, I recommend Wix. It is the most user-friendly, and it is very easy to manipulate, and you can make very stunning visual websites quite easily. So I find that that is what I recommend to anyone, especially if you are doing it yourself rather than using a company or someone who has web expertise. When it comes to graphic design, Canva has come a very, very long way. I used to be purely Photoshop and Adobe, but now I've almost exclusively used Photoshop, or sorry, Canva. And there's a free version for you as well. So any of your social media, you can edit videos on there, you can make your posters, anything that you want. They even have a print function now that you can, if you need things printed off, you can do it through them without having to transfer your design. So Canva is fantastic for that. Photos and videos, iPhone. I don't think there's any other need for anything other than that, especially if you have an iPhone, even starting an iPhone 12. The quality has gotten so high and it's completely optimized for social media already. So it's filming in the right proportions, the colors, etc. For editing videos quickly, CapCut is awesome. They have a lot of features and it's free. You can also edit right in the Instagram app. Like I said earlier, you can use Canva as well, and those are all very user-friendly, and you can usually create videos quite quickly. CapCut too has a lot of templates. If you do end up downloading the app, there's a search bar, and you can go farm collage or weekend recap, and it'll actually just have it all pre-made. So you just click on the videos you want to add, it formats it for you, puts a song to it, and you can just download it. So that can make your life very, very easy. Stock images, this is the big one. So what we've run into a little bit in the past, and what I see very much just through my company is a lot of organizations will just take, say, a video or a photo off of Google search and use it on the website, or they'll take a photo that's not licensed, and that can actually, well, it's technically illegal and it can create problems. We've had some emails saying that there was unlicensed photos being used. They need to be taken down. They can result in fines sometimes. So if you're using photos on your website or on your social that you didn't take, that aren't of your farm. So like, for example, every single photo in this slide right now is a stock image, but they're all licensed. You can use what's called Unsplash. It's all free. You just find it on Google, look up Unsplash, and then you search, okay, cattle or irrigation or tractors. It'll have a ton of very beautiful photos of them, and those are fully licensed for you to use. In your emails, in your websites, etc., and there won't be any licensing issues. So Unsplash is a really great one. Canva also has its own licensed photo library. So if you're on Canva and you go to the bottom where there's photos, anything in there is fully licensed as well. So just want to make sure that everyone is aware that, and not to mention they're actually a high resolution. Google, a lot of the ones on there, when you actually go to use them, they're quite grainy. Grainy and illegal is no good. And then finally for scheduling, I didn't touch on this today, but you do have the ability to schedule social media posts in advance, which is awesome. So you can sit down, schedule your post for the month, and then not have to touch it again, which I think is a lovely feature, and I use it heavily. You can do this for free directly on Instagram. You can do it on what's called Meta Business Suite, and any of these have that capability. There's applications like Hootsuite and Later.com, but they're quite expensive. So, and they're pretty robust. For the purposes of you guys, I think that using the Meta Business Suite, this means that you can schedule onto Facebook and Instagram for free. I believe it's up to 30 days at a time. So you can schedule anything up to a month from now. That brings me to the end of my presentation. So I will stop sharing my screen now. And if anyone has any questions, now's the time.
Thank you, Cameo. That was fabulous. I think I can speak for everybody when I say that. It's just wonderful to see the opportunity with technology and how that can actually help us advance. So I think there's a lot of things that people will take away from this. So if anyone has any specific questions, feel free to unmute and you can just ask Cameo directly.
Best way to take self videos in frame. the best way to do this, let me actually walk you guys through it. In frame, do you mean like well centered and having good balance? I assume. Yes. Okay. So what I do is you go into settings on your, this is on an iPhone, and I haven't done this in a while, so you're getting the live me figuring this out in real time. Yes, you go into your settings in iPhone, you search camera, and then there's a section on the bottom that says composition, and there a tab that says grid. Your grid by default, I think, is often off. You can turn it on, and that'll actually give you a full grid. So when you open up your camera, there's a 3x3 square. And so anything in that is centered. I find it so helpful. I have it on 100% of the time. That can really help with composition and making sure that, you know, if you're taking a photo of someone, that their head or their whatever is likely right in that middle of that 9 square frame, the animal, etc. And in Android, oh, to be honest, ask ChatGPT about how to put a grid on your Android, because I don't have an Android, so I'm not gonna lie, I can't answer that one, but I imagine it's very similar, and I know they have the grid feature as well. I know ChatGPT, I treat it like Google now, rather than asking Google, because there can be blogs and there can be ads. ChatGPT gives you like the purest search results, so that's what I would utilize for that.
Marvelous. Well, I think that takes us to the end of our hour. Thank you for everything. And I know that everything will be in the host resources, so people will be able to access this information, the links. And I did put the water link or the PDF of the water stories there as well. So thank you, everyone. And we'll have a wonderful holiday, everyone, and look forward to seeing you all in the new year.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Any questions, content, etc., feel free to email me directly or message on any of the social media platforms. And happy holidays to all.